Okay, so everything that happened in this world starts in the spiritual world, right? That's the source. And once it's activated in the spiritual world, it happens here, like a switch electricity. The light turns on here. There is, however, one exception to this rule, and that includes all things that depend on man's free will. Okay, so meaning that he is telling us something very, very important. Speaking about the free choice, free will, and that meaning that there is something going on, but there's one exception that can, in a way, impact the whole system that's going on, which is man's free will. God willed that man should be able to choose freely between good and evil, and therefore made man absolutely independent in this respect. And man was thus given the power to influence the world and its creatures in any manner his free will desires. So here we are told something really incredible, because basically he's saying that we have so much power. There's the whole world going on and things are happening and all that. And he is telling us, you have the power to change, to affect the whole system. Okay, and we'll see that it applies to men, to Jews and non-Jews, but we'll see that Jews have a unique power for that, direct connection. So he says like the world therefore contains two opposite general influences. The first is that of natural determinism, while the second is undeterministic. So, we always speak about faith or destiny. So yes, there is a type of destiny already, pre-programmed. There is a type of thing that it's supposed to happen, just like astrology. So there's astrology, right? And things are supposed to happen, horoscope, all that. But there's something that can go against it, indeterministic, indeterminism, complicated word for a Frenchman. Okay, so it says like that. The determinist, he explains what's happening, how man has the power to change everything. The deterministic influence is directed downward from on high, while the undeterministic is directed upward from below. So basically, everything happens in a way that, sorry, just, okay. Okay. Everybody's muted. Anybody needs to unmute themselves, please unmute yourself to ask questions. So, right, there's influence going down, right? That's, in a way, we could call it the male power in the world, which is that whatever happens is activated upward and goes down. And then there's, okay, with the indeterministic is direct upward from below. And then us, we're, so to speak, the female, we affect the world from below, and that's would be the female influence. So we have a relationship, okay? It's like a relationship, and we have to understand that it connects to what the Gemara says, Bishvili nivra olam. The world is created for you. So even though there's a system, you put in the system, but you can change the system based on your free choice. This is because the deterministic is the influence that stems from the highest forces, and therefore, when it is directed toward our material world, it is directed downward. The indeterministic influence, on the other hand, is the result of man's free will here in the physical world. In a way, to continue with the mashal, the understanding of men and women, male and female, we are down here the ezer kenegdo, because we can go keneged the whole system. Since both man and his actions are physical, the only direct influence that he can have is on physical things. because of the linkage between the physical world and the highest forces. However, every time a physical thing is influenced, it also has an effect on its counterpart among these forces. Okay, so up there, it starts with a spiritual activation, right? As if it's the brain who decides what's going to happen to the body. But for us, we do a physical action, and from the physical action, you can change the spiritual system. Now, that's very powerful, because when we speak about, okay, someone wants to change, we are in the habit, your body is in the habit of doing something. You're used to do something a certain way. Why you used to do a thing a certain way in your life? Because your brain is pre-programmed, so to speak, or since childhood, right? You're pre-programmed to act a certain way and to behave a certain way. However, so we can make a decision from the brain, right? And decide this is what I'm going to do. And that's why we most of the time function that way. But we can say, now I'm going to push my body to do something else, even though my brain is not ready for it. Even though my brain is not in the habit of it. It has another agenda, another system, another routine. And therefore, that famous expression, fake it till you make it. I like to call it fake it till you become it, which is a very big thing, actually, to the Ramchal in Mr. Hashem. If you want to change who you are, you want to change your neural path, your synapses in your brain by doing a physical action, we know scientifically that you can actually change the way you think about something, and you can change your habit. So again, we're speaking about heaven and earth, spiritual and physical, but we're talking also body and soul. We have to understand that it's a reality that by doing things on the physical level that we're not used to do on the spiritual level, you will be able to change your spiritual level or the way your brain is wired. Today we will call it rewiring your brain. And interestingly, the way they say you have to rewire your brain is you have to have your an idea of what you want, obviously, but you have to feel it in your body. Your body has to feel the emotion as if it's happening, and you have to do the action, and that enables then the brain to be rewired, because it becomes like a new neural path, a new system, a new wire. Okay. Since man's deeds in the world below are what influence these forces on high, man's influence is said to be directed upward. It is thus the exact opposite of the natural deterministic influences. And that's why it's so hard to change, right? Because the world is wired. Imagine your spiritual world like your brain, right? So you're going against a force. And that's the whole famous thing, that to change one character trait is harder than to learn the whole Talmud. Because learning the whole Talmud is like more spiritual, it's in your brain. But to actually change a character trait means you have to rewire the way your brain think, and you recreate an entire new world, an entire new system. It is necessary to know, however, that even man's deeds are not all the result of his free will. So not everything we do is actually just our free will. While this is true of most of his action, there are some that result from a divine decree to reward or punish him, as will be discussed in detail in the latter section. Right? So there are things happening in the world that are not just because of his free will, but also has to do with reward and punishment. Such decrees take place in the same manner as other natural phenomena, where the influence is directed downward from the highest forces. So therefore, punishment, reward and punishment is going to be happening based on the same way the way of determinist influence. Nevertheless, even in such a case, the elements resulting from the individual's own free will are still directed upward in the manner discussed earlier. Okay, so I think what he means is that reward punishment will happen still based on his own free choice, which goes from bottom to top. I know it's no, okay, so that means that there's no, the real punishment doesn't, it has nothing to do with the free choice. The free choice still acts the way it's supposed to be, and it's just that there's an extra influence for reward punishment. Okay, so now God arranged things so that every matter falling within the realm of man's free will should be able to affect the transcendental forces through this indeterministic influence according to the measure and degree set forth by God. Okay, so meaning that even though there's a design and everything is set, so to speak, destiny, we are able to rewrite history. Again, it's a very powerful concept, and we have to understand that how powerful you are. You know, if you want to have Yira, that we need to get a sense of the power of our free choice and free will. It is real, and you know, it's connected to when we pray and also changing God's mind. It's not that we're changing God's mind, that God has a destiny, and part of the destiny of the world, things work a certain way. But with your actions, you're able to access different things that God has put in place. That it will look like Hashem God changed his mind based on your actions. It's not that he changed his mind, just he allows things to react in the way that he wants based on your action. That's also in the system. So it's like God knows all options. You just change the way the world looks, and therefore God allows another action to happen that was already arranged before. Sorry, may make your head spin, but it is very powerful. We can rewrite history. We can rewrite our life. It is something transcendental. I'm doing something where my physical action, my physical choice have actually the ability to change the way the world is going to react. So that's something we could say almost supernatural, right? Who would think that the body has the power to rewire the brain, right? So that the physical can rewire the spiritual, but that's what we're capable of. So this is true not only of man's deeds, but even of his speech and thoughts. So now it's going even more powerful. So you have the actions that you do, right, with your body. Then you have your speech, the language you say, the words you say, and your thoughts. Those three things make a difference, as we saw last time with Ahava and Yira. It was 2 or 3 times ago actually. Ahava and Yira, just those emotions, have the potential to bring more or less energy, holiness into the world. So we affect the world with those things, and when we learn Torah with the speech and with the thoughts, all that is very real. So someone who is very aware of that, by the way, I have to mention that the more we are aware of that, the more we believe and we know that this is true and happens, the more it happens. It's almost a reality check. God is going to respond to you and going to change the world based on the level of how much emunah you have in that. And that's why the Talmud says that you are obligated to know, to believe that everything changes because of you. Do you really believe that things around you are really happening because of you, even things that are not directly in front of you? Well, this is telling you, you have to reach that level of belief and knowledge. You have to be convinced about it. The more convinced you are when you daven, when you ask for something that it's happening, the more it will be happening. So it's almost mida keneged mida. The more you trust in your power, the more you trust in God. You know, it's like someone learning about his own personal power, you know, like a superhero, so to speak. So I learn to trust more my power, to connect more to my power, the more I'm able to be in touch with it and use it and and grow in it. So the amount and degree of this influence, however, cannot exceed the limits decreed and circumscribed by the highest wisdom. Obviously, there's a limit. You know, I cannot rewire my brain that now I can grow wings and fly. I cannot rewire my brain that now the world should look a different color, or you know. So we can manipulate the system, but there's a certain limit to how much we can. However, he's going to speak at some point also about how we can manipulate the spiritual world. But again, everything is within limits. We're not God, we're just human beings, and we cannot change everything. There are rules of changing. And that's when someone learns Kabbalah deeper, he can know, a real Kabbalist knows the rule and he knows how far he can go. But let's understand that we are so powerful that we can technically resurrect the dead. We can change someone's life. It says, right, the Mesilas Yesharim says that there's a ladder of power, that the more you go in the ladder of refinement of character traits, the more holy you become, the more refined in your character traits you become, the more you'll be able to have an impact on the world, up to the point on the top of the ladder after Ruach HaKodesh, he says you can do Tchias HaMesim. That's what you're capable of. Okay, so it's almost reversing an order of the spiritual world, which is mind-boggling, incredible. This is how powerful we are. Okay, so any questions so far? No, you're so amazed that there's nothing to say, right? Okay, so let's continue the section 6. Every indeterministic influence, however, also result in the deterministic influences. So when the highest forces are influenced by man's free will, they in turn influence the physical things that are inherently linked to them. So let's say I pray, I have a spiritual thought and like a special action, that now it goes upward, it has a change, and now because of that change in the spiritual world, because you rewire your brain, now that's going to bring a new, now this is going to bring a new reality down here in the physical world. Okay, so we're talking about something really powerful, where the whole system is changed upside down. All these processes, however, follow many detailed laws as decreed by the highest wisdom as being best for creation. Both the ways through which man's influence reaches the highest forces and the manner in which these forces react towards the physical world all depends on many factors. Meaning that there's many forces and rules at play in the same time. All this constitutes a deep mystery of how God's providence works and bring about everything that was and will be. Later on, actually soon after this chapter, actually, he has a whole section on providence. Here it's just touching upon it, so to connect to man's free will. But providence of what's happening in the world is one of the deepest understanding of how the world works, deep, because you try to understand really how the world functions, how God created the world, and what's your potential impact on it. So it is very deep, and to understand everything, you have to learn Kabbalah. Here, he's going to put it in this world in words that doesn't appear to be Kabbalah, but it's all based on the spiritual matrix system of the world. Okay. Section 7. As discussed earlier, God's wisdom decreed that both good and evil exist in the world. Like all other things, this concept must begin among these fundamental forces and then have effects in the physical world. So our free choice is connected to good and evil, will and punishment, and therefore that's how good or evil is activated in the world also, because technically there's no evil. The only evil is when we make the choice to in a negative way, which will bring negativity in the world. Technically, God just want to do chesed, just want to send good, but our action interfere with that good. And it's not that God prevents us from giving the good. The good is supposed to come, but we make the good go to waste, so to speak, in the force of the evil through our actions, and therefore we cannot access it. So it looks like God is angry at us and all that. No, we should be angry at ourselves, so to speak, when something happened. We made a mistake. Okay, now the key is to redirect, repair that after that. That's Teshuvah, and that's a good preparation for Elul. Right, tonight is Rosh Chodesh Elul, and Elul is all about Teshuvah and how we can change everything in the system. Interesting, what do you say? Ani ledodi, vedodi li. As if to say, the spiritual is to the physical and physical to the spiritual. So it's a relationship described as husband and wife, but this is really male, female, and that's really what's happening here with the physical and spiritual world and how they affect each other. Again, everything in this world is about marriage, so to speak, right? One marrying the other, the unity of everything and how they work together in a relationship and creating a balance. So by understanding how this physical and spiritual world works, we understand how relationship between two individuals is supposed to work, and vice versa. That's why God says that, it says in Chazal that we can understand everything about how the world works based on our body. Meaning, the more you understand your human body, or how you work biologically and emotionally and intellectually, the more I will be able to understand how God runs the world and how it functions, how the spiritual and physical interact. God's wisdom arranged the transcendental forces, the rules of all that was created, and set them in an order and system in which it would be possible that they should pertain to them either rectification, tikkun, or damage, kilkul, spiritual damage. They therefore have states that are good and otherwise. So the essence of a state of good is when a force has the capacity to be illuminated by the light of God's presence. So whatever good comes, whatever action we do that is good, we're speaking really about the light of God's presence, right? Or you bring more God in the world, more light, more revelation of God's presence, or you bring less. The opposite state is that which lacks this capacity, and where this light is therefore withheld from a given force. That's what we're saying. When you do bad action, the good is redirected, is withheld. The result of the rectification of these forces is everything good that exists in the physical world. Its converse is the opposite. So if we want everything necessary on the physical world to have the good that's necessary for the physical world, we need the spiritual to be functioning properly, and vice versa. If we want everything to function properly in the spiritual world, we need to make sure that everything functions properly here. It's part of each other. Okay, so question. Okay, we'll do one more paragraph, and we're almost done technically. Yeah, we'll do a bit more and try not to go past too much 7. I know we start late. It is necessary to realize that the true cause of everything good, whether among the forces or their effects, is the light of God's presence. Like you said before, the cause of all evil, on the other hand, is the absence of this light. Okay, so it's basically reiterating what we just said. With regard to good, however, God is considered its actual cause, both in regard and in particular. Meaning, when you speak about good, it's all comes from God. God is constantly sending the good. In a way, it's saying that the only good we can do is allowing the good to happen, right? Because God is chesed. Olam chesed yibaneh, God just gives the chesed. God is not considered the direct cause of evil, on the other hand, and we are thus told that God does not relate his name to evil. So here's the difference. When something bad happens, it's not God doing the bad. It's us doing something that interferes with the good coming, and therefore it looks as if God said, I'm sending you something bad. But it's really all in our hands, which is even more scary. But that's our power, that's our greatness, that's the ability to do evil and to destroy and to break is our greatest power, because it shows why it has to be like that, because it has to show that what we do matter. God wants us to feel in a position where everything that I do matters. That's how powerful we are. That's how important we are. God is nevertheless still the indirect cause even of evil, since its actual cause is the absence of good, and it therefore results from the absence of God's light and the concealment of his presence. So obviously, it's indirect in the sense that God's light is withheld, and he created that system, but it's still we are the primary source. No bounds or limits can be placed on God's omnipotence, and therefore there is nothing preventing him from creating an even evil if he so desires. Meaning, even though we spoke that there's such a system, God, if he wants, could do create something that will appear to us as evil, independently of our free will. In order for the various concepts of evil to exist, he created a particular root and source. The purpose of the source of evil was to give rise to particular concepts to the extent that the highest wisdom determined necessary so that both man and the world be in its desired state. Regarding this source of evil, the scripture said, God forms light and creates darkness, makes peace and creates evil, right? And that's we say every day in our davening. Baruch Hu, we say, Baruch Ata Hashem, Yotzer Or, Uborech Choshech. So he creates, light is formed, meaning there's a way light is distributed into the world, Uborech Choshech, but he creates a system called darkness, where that can limit God's light, Oseh Shalom, and then he makes that whole system be in balance and work with each other like a Shalom Bait. Uborera, and then he creates evil, which is what's going to interact, because evil and darkness is still not exactly the same thing, right? So that's why he's saying that is that independent thing, that evil can technically be what appears as evil, interfere with creation, even in that shalom peace. But why he would do that? In order to rebalance the world. And that's why sometimes it's also independent of our free choice. Like we say, sometimes God's act indirectly. So things going to happen in the world. A pandemic, or like everything we said, the Holocaust, all those things doesn't mean that we did something bad. It means that sometimes the world needs to rebalance each other, independently of each individual's free choice. Okay, but again, that's extremely hard to understand how it works. We are just hinted here about that there's how the system, could behave. This source of evil includes many different forces from which all concepts of deficiency and evil originate. It can affect both body and soul in all their various categories, and we will discuss this further in the second section, which is just after that. In general, the activity of these evil forces, both individually and as a whole, depends on the extent to which God's light is absent and his presence concealed. It's as if to say, meaning evil has its own little independent way of behaving. That's like Gemara says, let's say if there's a plague, God forbid, there's the Malach HaMaves, the angel of death that has the ability to act in a certain way, almost as if that he had free choice. So meaning that's why they say you should not go in a hospital, hang out in a hospital, because there are people who are being attacked by the Malach HaMaves, and anybody who is in that place can be affected by that. So there are rules for how those forces can behave, and we have to be careful of those. The greater this absence of light, the more authority and power these forces have to act, both in general and in particular. It has to do also with Yaakov and Esav. We said that when Yaakov is higher up, Esav is down, have power, or if Yaakov is down, then Esav has power. right? So this is one or the other has power, and we have to be aware of that. Okay. So the greater the absence of light, the more authority and power these forces have to act, both in general and in particular. When these evil forces gain power and authority, the force of good is weakened, and those forces which are the roots of all created things are damaged. This in turn weakens both the forces of the derivative branches, which are the physical things associated with them. Right, so this happened with man's first sin. When a man sinned first, the whole world, he became physical. He became a body of skin. He was a body of light. Now he doesn't even see that he has a body of light. And we're reminded of that on Havdalah. And we understand that now the physical has more forces, like there's an unbalance in the world, like he says at the beginning. We're not balanced anymore in the world. The evil forces seems to be more powerful. The physical things appears to be more powerful than the good. And we look at the world, see the world is a mess. It looks like we have lost control, and that there's more bad than good if you look at the news. And that's because it is more revealed and the good is more concealed, but the good is still processing, but we have the ability to reverse that and rebalance the world. So when these evil forces are subjugated and deprived of their authority and power to act, on the other hand, then the good becomes strengthened. The roots of all created things are then rectified and are set in a good state, so that both they and their branches are strengthened. Everything, therefore, depends on the strengthening of these forces, whether it be the concepts of good and evil, the battle between physical and spiritual, or other matters of perfection and deficiency. When either the force of good or that of evil gains power, its qualities and effect influence all created things, both through their roots and their branches. Like a virus, it goes everywhere. When either one is subjugated, on the other hand, its activity is nullified. So we're able to nullify, to neutralize the virus, and its attributes and effects are removed from the roots and branches of all creation. Okay, we're finishing with a very short little paragraph. There are many levels among the qualities of these evil forces and what results from them. In general, their effects are called corruption, tuma, right? Darkness, which is choshech, and pollution, zohama, mundane. Then mundane, which is called chol, and the like. So everything, when we say someone is tameh, someone is as zuhama, or it's chol, the weak, all those is an indication that there's a spiritual blockage, right? When we say tameh and tahor, doesn't mean pure and impure. Tameh means there's a blockage. I'm not able to access the spirituality that is available. There's a screen, there's a filter. Tahor means it's clear, and tahara means I have no interferences. I'm directly connected. That's why we try to purify our body and to, and to take away that pollution, that mundane, and replace it with the holy. Things resulting from the illumination of God's presence, on the other hand, are called holiness, purity, light, blessing, and the like. Okay, so that's what those things do. When you make a bracha, when you are tahor, when you do something that is holy, or you bring light. So those are the words when we read the Torah that we know are going to bring God's presence and allow all the tumah, all the interferences and the blockage to be removed. Again, this is important to know that we are all blocked. Our soul is blocked, right? And when we do something negative in our life, we have negativity on us, so to speak, like our aura. You see someone and you see his face is not shining like usual. You're not in the same positive energy than usual. That's because you have blocked the access to your neshama. So you need to clean yourself to recreate a physical vessel, your body, your thoughts, your emotions, in order to, and thoughts, in order to have them become vessel without blockages and tap into your soul. It's something that doesn't exist so much in psychology and therapy, that is missing in the non-Jewish world. Although some of it is true, they are missing some of the way to heal. Technically, the way to heal, the way to become positive, the way to be to be energetically positive is to reconnect to the soul. And now therapy and therapists, little by little, are connecting to the whole idea of meditation and mindfulness. All this really eventually is going to be revealed in even in the secular world. It's actually revealed in some more holistic way to approach therapy or trauma and all that stuff. That you need to connect to your inner self, because basically your soul is always happy. Your soul is always pure, deep, the inner root of your soul. And then you have to remove all those filters that prevents you from accessing the light of your soul. So technically, whatever happens, however negative you feel, no matter how great it is outside, while the sun is always shining above the clouds, I like to say, your soul is still shining any moment, and you need to allow your soul to shine forth again in your body. And then when you do that, you're able to reconnect. Again, you can do it through sometimes meditation, sometimes through music. Music has the ability to really help us reconnect. Sometimes you can do it through physical activity that's going to change, the way your body feels. Sometimes we just need to clean the way we think or the way we feel through different forms, like I say music, but for example, we have to find techniques, a mitzvah, and we can do that too. Okay, we're almost done. So these are all general categories. When we consider either elements, however, we are able to distinguish the specific categories and details of these general classes. Around these revolves all of God's providence through which he directs his world. For each one of these concepts, however, they are agents or overseers belonging to the general class of angels appointed to translate them into action in the physical world. That's when it comes with the good angels and the bad angels. It's not that they have independence, they are just appointed to carry out the actions made by men or whatever is decreed in heaven, for good or for bad. This is true of both good concepts and their opposite. These angelic agents are God's servants obeying his word. They don't have free will. God willed and organized things so that his decrees should be translated into actions through angels, each in its own appointed area of influence. And with this we conclude man's responsibility in the world. Well, actually, that was before, but that was the higher part with the spiritual realm, how the world functions, behave, and God willing, next time we will continue on God's providence, which is very deep. Again, one of the hardest things to understand, but understanding God's providence enables us to have more bitachon, more emuna. It helps us react to the world that might appear as good, or when the world has a pandemic like now and all that, and like, how do we deal with that? Why is it happening? So it gives all the different options when it's happening. So when you understand how the world works, it's much easier to deal with it on a positive way, because you understand it's part of a system that's meant to rebalance the world. It's easier to deal with suffering. It's easier to deal with darkness. It's easier to deal with pain. It's like you enter into the surgery room and you explain what surgery the surgeon is performing. And then, because if you don't know anything about surgery, you see the guy doing surgery, it looks terrible. It looks like it's killing, it's evil, it's bloody. But no, that's because you have no understanding of how surgery works and what the guy is doing. So same thing with God. Any questions for me? I guess no. So we'll end up here, and God willing, continue next week. Again, I apologize for the delay, technical difficulties. There was some interferences, you know, a lack of light. So now we were able to reconnect fully Tahor, and God willing, we will continue next week. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.